a tutorial video on how to make a wobble bass, and for this video I'm going to be using a VST plugin. It's a really basic analog VST plugin. You can use any plugin pretty much any instrument VST plugin with an oscillator and with a filter and with an LFO, and you can do this. Different plugins, you can get different sounds, some better sounds, some worse. It just depends what you want. So in this case it's a 2 oscillator VST plugin, and it has a filter and some LFOs. And so this is what I do whenever I go to make a wobble bass. Basically I tend to choose saw or square wave with each other, or one or the other. In this case I'll just use a saw wave and a square wave for demonstration purposes to show that it works. And so you get those 2 oscillators, I'm sorry, and go to the filter, and basically the wobble comes from adjusting the frequency knob or the cutoff. So let's see, I'll play a note. Oh, that's really loud. So basically what I've done is I take this LFO right here. This is without the LFO. Okay, basic square and saw waves together. And so to make it wobble, what I do is I come over here to the LFO, I turn it on, and I've routed it to filter right here. And this plugin has an option to sync it with the tempo, so it'll have LFO alterations that work in the tempo that you've set as the master tempo. So for this one, I've tempo synced it, and so this is what it sounds like with the LFO turned on, routed to the filter up here. So you can hear it wobbling, but it doesn't sound like anything special yet. So what I do is, by tweaking it, by bringing the frequency down, and the speed just depends what you want, but right here you can get a better sound. So it's really basic. You're basically just routing a square or a saw wave through an LFO and having the LFO affect the filter. It's just the filter that makes it wobble. That's all it is. So if you're good with LFOs, you just route it to the filter. And by changing the speed of the LFO, you can make the wobble change speeds for like a more dynamic kind of sound. And then to make the sound more fat, some people call it, you can pitch the waves out. It makes it sound like more waves exist, so it I think that sounds a little bit more full. If I pitch it down some semitones here, this will sound cool. So the wobble comes from the filter. The wobbling comes from the filter, but to make the sound better, you just need to make a more dynamic waveform, and that comes from pitching it up some semitones or down. Or if you have like a 4 oscillator VST, you can get a really crazy sound. So that's pretty much all it is. Or if you put a flange on it or something, it can sound kind of cool. And one more trick I've found is if you run the whole thing through a bit crusher, it can sound really crazy. Like, let's see. I'm going to tempo sync this. This is called buffer override. It's a pretty good bit crusher in my opinion. Lots of parameters, but here's what it sounds like through this. Whoops. Let's see. is sick. So, some tricks. You know the wobble comes from the filter and using an LFO and things like that. But to make it sound better, you can pitch the oscillators both ways. Pretty much all VST plugins have this kind of option to fine pitch adjust the waveform, and in dubstep it's more about dynamics than key, I guess. I mean, it depends, but to make it more fat, you can just pitch it. And so that's what I've done here. I'm using a bit crusher. Bit crushers just make crazy sounds, so it just sounds like super fat, super heavy bass. Goes in the sub really well. So basically that's my tutorial. Yeah, it just comes from the filter. That's all the wobble comes from. But you'll learn the more you use plugins to make the sound more thick. You can either run it through tons of effect modules, or you can simply pitch the waveform. And so yeah, that's my tutorial. And this works in pretty much all DAWs. Obviously, you just need VST capabilities, which pretty much all of them have. So yeah, that's what I've got. Subscribe to hear some of the songs I've made and things, and maybe I'll get some more tutorials depending on what you guys ask for or how many views this gets. So alright, thank you.